This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to episode number 41. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 29th of July 2006. Do you know what project portfolio management is? Well, if you do or if you don't, today is definitely going to be a very, very interesting episode for you because I have a great interview for you with David L. Davis, PMP, about project portfolio management tools. The interview is so long and so great, in fact, that I decided to cut it into two pieces. So part one you can hear today, and part two next week. So you can look forward to something next week already. But before we get going with the main section of the show, as always, a few announcements. First of all, last time I'm announcing this, I have gone live with my new website, www.thepmpodcast.com. And I would appreciate it if you have your own website, if you are still pointing to the old link at Blogger. I'd appreciate it if you would update that link. Or if you have your website and don't have a link up to me yet, I would appreciate it if you would put a link up. Well, next, as you may know, I am currently the chair-elect for my local PMI chapter, so I'm quite a bit involved in our chapter activities, and I'm also in the middle of preparing for next year when I will be the president. Then I'm also working on this podcast right here. I have a real job, I have a wife, and I have a house that needs my attention. Consequently, I'm not really surprised that I am extremely tired today. I hope you can't really hear that in my voice. But despite of all of this, I'm rather surprised how well my work on the PM Prepcast is going anyway. All those of you out there who are waiting for a high-quality podcast to help you prepare for the PMP certificate, you can look forward to the day when I launch this new product. It will be your audio companion on the road of becoming a PMP. The target launch date is still at the end of September. Yeah, and talking about quality, I got an email from Michael Wharton. He is the president of Wharton Computer Consulting Incorporated. And he writes to me, he says that he listens to the podcast while he is walking in town, so he has a lot of ambient noise around where he is. And occasionally he says it's quite difficult to hear what I say or what the interview guests are saying, and he suggests that I record this at much higher output levels. So I will do my best henceforth to record everything at a much higher volume so that everyone can hear everything that I say. Today's episode is sponsored by BOT International, the provider of processes on demand. PMO processes, policies and dashboards can be quite a bother to set up, institutionalize and maintain. BOT's Processes on Demand solves this problem by providing customizable project management processes and templates, PMO policies and dashboards, and integration features to PPM and collaboration applications such as Microsoft Project Server and SharePoint. To learn more, please visit www.botinternational.com. Yes, here are the winners, 10 winners of the software giveaway for the Alloc PSA software, which Conzimaris and his company have given to us to give away. And the winners are Eric Roberts from the United States, Ken Bolson from the United States, John Gerber from the United States, Lolim Shen Ji from Malaysia, Justin Monuto from the United States, Eliseo Pita from Spain, Roland Reinhardt from the United States, K. Senthil Kumar from India, Chu Yu Xavier Hugh from Taiwan, and Gabriel Bogea Perez from Brazil. I'm sorry if I mispronounced any of your names completely wrong. But nevertheless, congratulations to all of you for having won one copy of the Alloc PSA software product. Here's another quick update for you in regards to last week's discussion about project management certificates, and that is the fact that the ASAPM introduces a new Certified Senior Project Manager credential. Let me quote here from their press release. The American Society for the Advancement of Project Management, ASAPM, has announced the public availability of ASAPM's Certified Senior Project Manager credential. According to Lou Ireland, the president of ASAPM, ASAPM has been working to bring competency-based certification to the USA for nearly 4 years. We are both pleased and proud to be able to offer this valuable service to project managers and their employers throughout the USA. Now, personally, I think that competition is great. And the fact that now the ASAPM has a competency-based certification available in the US, and the PMI is also bringing out its competency-based programs manager certification out. This is going to be good for the industry here in the USA. Helpful resources. Now, if you've gone to the new website, you will have noticed that I have a link on the left-hand side, Helpful Resources. If you click on that, you will find a long list of helpful resources categorized, and I am currently moving all the helpful resources from the previous site over into these categories. So if you don't find yet what you're looking for, I'm currently at show number 22, and I'm working my way down towards show number 1. So more and more helpful resources are going to appear there. 3 that appear there are 2 free books for you. The first of all is a free project management guidebook, and the second one is the complete book on project-related terms and definitions. You will also find those 2 free books on the left-hand side under PM Help. The project management guidebook for me is a keeper. I always like to go back to the basics before I start a new project. Just don't start running with the project. No. Go back and remind yourself of what you are supposed to do as a project manager in order to start up a project correctly. And of course, the complete book on project management related terms is a good book for all of us if you're kind of coming across a term and you're wondering, I wonder what this means. The good thing about this is it is much more entertaining than the glossary which you will find at the end of the PMBOK guide. The third helpful resource I have for you today comes from Robin Yeasley from the UK. He writes, Cornelius, I have recently interviewed the US author and ITIL expert Randy Steinberg. Together we produced a 2-hour audio and fully edited 62-page PDF transcript on the top 12 most frequently asked questions about ITIL implementation strategies. It has received rave reviews and was featured in Tech Republic's daily newsletter last week. This might prove very useful to your project management community, and it's at www.asktheserviceexpert.com. And now let us move on to the main section of today's show, the interview with David L. Davis on project portfolio management. Dave's credentials include 20 years experience in project management. He is a certified PMP and also an accredited educator. He has performed many roles in implementing program management tools, including application administration, report writing, program manager, project manager, coach, and trainer. He has worked in a variety of organizations and is currently program managing a customer implementation portfolio for AT&T's e-business organization. He has significant experience in implementing PPMS, including process definition, tool setup, reporting, and lifecycle management. Dave firmly believes in the role of application administration for portfolio integration and understands the challenges of long-term compliance to a methodology and process and the challenges with keeping the dull and mundane details current and relevant. Well, here is part 1 of the interview with David L. Davis.
The Project Management Podcast Feature Interview. Today with David L. Davis, PMP.
Well, hello, Dave, and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me, Cornelius.
Yeah, absolutely no problem. Let me start out today's interview with a quote that you wrote. You said in the online CIO magazine, in a remark, an item we underestimated when implementing a portfolio management tool was the amount of time the PM coaches had to spend to ensure compliance with all the processes associated with the content. Do not think that a portfolio management tool is a turnkey application. It will require constant monitoring, tweaking, and some hardline intervention. Now, you said this in October 2003. That's almost 3 years ago. Has anything changed since then?
Not at all. I had a boss who used to like to use the phrase, people do what is inspected, not as what is expected.
I have a similar boss, yes.
But we found that, they had the best of intentions, but people can let this slide. And a lot of the things in portfolio management is minutia type work, posting meeting minutes or, some sort of item like that, updating schedule. I think most project managers would confess that they don't update the schedule until as late as possible before the next project review and some of those things. But when you're looking at a portfolio, and we've actually had some with over a couple hundred active projects, it's possible to slip when we had 12 project managers, a couple hundred projects, and to keep everything current and up to date is difficult, time-consuming, and somebody really needs to be on top of that these things are slipping and out of date. Selling portfolio management in and of itself is difficult enough, but when you sell it and you have incomplete or not up-to-date data, then you start to lose some credibility and some other things, and it's difficult then to get people to buy into this is the business tool. This is the source of information for how we're going to manage our projects for the business.
Right. That is focused on the actual data that you're putting in as a project manager. But what about actually the turnkey solution that you mentioned? Are they more of a turnkey solution today? Can you just plug it into your environment and it'll work?
No, I don't think so at all, because it's just a tool. It needs to be able to support how your organization manages projects, and actually at a portfolio, if you drive it up to a portfolio level, enough consistency across all your projects that you can compare, and I hate cliches, but I'll use them all the time, but so you compare apples to apples as you're looking across the portfolio. One of the things that we found to be very effective is to define a workflow of what are the different phases of a project. And for example, I'm involved in some that are application integration between major companies. And we have some defined phases, such as a qualify, where this is real, there's enough volume, there's enough things that this becomes a project. So we have a qualify stage. And then it goes to what we call an engage phase, which means we've actually started discussing with the customer the technical requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And then it goes into a develop stage. and other stages accordingly. And what that drives is some consistency across all your projects. For example, 40% complete, I don't know what that means. 40% complete in one project may not be 40% complete in another.
I agree.
With these phases, we have defined entrance and exit criteria. So the portfolio piece does make sure that you've got those defined entrance and exit criteria tracked, audited, stored, however exactly you want to phrase it, but that there's some sort of audit trail capability where you're able to see that, yes, on this date, all the documents were here and they were baselined, and therefore we're able to go from one phase to the other. Now, when I come back to the compliance with all those processes associated, there's some project managers that love lots of details, and there's others that don't. So I've seen a lot of portfolio management kind of be implemented by committee. And so there's some things you say that this may be required on there. For example, one area is issue management. We have some project managers that say, well, issues, I just kind of track them in my meeting minutes, and I only pose it as an issue when I have to go for help outside of my team to get something resolved. While there's others that's how they really manage their status calls, is there's a list of items, either action items or issues, and I want to know what it is. So you look at the projects for one, and they'll have 2 issues per project, or the other one may have 115. And I'm not here to say which one's better, which one's not, but clearly that's where some of this comes in as far as compliance and some of that other piece. If you're a portfolio manager, if you're the boss and you want to look at all your issues across all your projects that your people have for you, you'd like them in one spot and consistently defined. And if somebody's just doing it in in their minutes and not logging it there, then you could end up in some embarrassing situations where you're not aware of something that you should have been.
Now, we're already down in the trenches, deep in portfolio management. I think for the benefit of those listeners out there who don't really know what portfolio management is, let's take a step back and talk about it in theory. What is portfolio management? How would you define it?
Well, the definition per Dave Davis, and this is not 100% in alignment with PMI, but it's close.
Right.
There's actually 3 layers in the PMI, the OPM3 models, and some of the other models, where there's a project, and then there's a program, and then there's a portfolio. So I kind of look at a project as an individual piece of work, defined beginning, defined end. So that I think is pretty well defined. A program to me is kind of like at a business unit level of all your projects that you have resources assigned to or involved in or whatever, to be able to measure the progress of your projects, to be able to consistently look at the different projects, to be able to find their state, are they red, yellows, greens, those sorts of things. And then a program is actually multiple business units, and how does it work across multiple business units. An example of that may be that there's an organization that's involved in some sort of service support, a care center, customer care center, whatever. So they may have their own set of projects that are going on. And then there may be another group in an IT development that's an entirely different business unit that may be developing some tools for the care center. So a program would actually look at how do those two interrelate. A portfolio would look at how those two interrelate. A program look at all the ones going on in the call center as a program, all the ones going on in the IT group as a program.
Yeah, there's no particular size that a company has to have in order to justify portfolio management.
No, I don't think. I would venture to say that portfolio management has been going on for years. It just now getting to a point where tools and companies are able to offer solutions to manage your whole portfolio. Portfolio management, like I said, it's been around for years. It's always been, this project's happening, it's dependent on that project. We just maybe didn't call it portfolio management.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure that since it's been around for years, so you probably remember the first portfolio management tool that you implemented. Can you tell us a little bit about what that project was like, and what would you do differently today? That's probably the more important portion.
Well, actually, the first one I did, and I actually presented a paper on this at PMI in '97, I believe. We actually went into WebSpace and did it where we posted documents and whatever and had a main URL, a splash page, so to speak, which really had hyperlinks to these different documents. And then there were like one or two fields on there which would say red, yellow, green, or whatever. So we actually started with no tool, unless you consider a web server a tool, which that could be negotiated either way. And that was the first time we tried to get things at a portfolio level. It worked somewhat. This is where we really got into the compliance and people posting what we call artifacts, any sort of documentation and some of that, and keeping it current. And some of those things were difficult. But we were still able to provide our stakeholders a spot to go to be able to look at what were all the projects that we were dealing with, and a hyperlink to be able to drill down and get more information. That worked okay. Lots of lessons learned on there, and I'll probably talk about those a little bit before I talk about our next intervention. We actually went with tools.
What would you do different today?
The first thing I would do differently is not be as naive on how wide acceptance would be just because there's something out there that's a tool.
Yeah.
I was naive and thought, people would like to have this out here in a web space and be able to click and look at the different pieces. And that isn't so. Actually, I still think one of the biggest challenges today is people are email-centric and they want everything sent to them in email. They don't necessarily want to go out and find information or be able to go and get data in anything. They want it delivered. They want it hand-delivered and told what it is and told why they care about it. But that's a process people issue. I won't go there too much, but that is definitely a lesson learned. The other big lesson learned is to have defined before you go into it how your business wants to manage your portfolio. I talked before about the phases of a project. I would highly recommend that before you go into this, you define how do you measure your states of your project and what is your criteria to go into and out of those projects. And by criteria, I mean a true deliverable that you can get your hands on and see that it's there. And that everybody agrees to it. The concept of baselining. We all agree at this point in time that this is what we're working from. So that would be one of the big lessons learned, is to define your stages and define your processes for how you're going to manage your entrance and exit criteria into these stages. The next big lesson learned is think about your output. Website's nice, you can go in and look at it and everything, but if you can't get some usable output that tells you what the state of your portfolio is, you really don't have the complete picture. For example, before I've talked about phases of a project, we have several reports where it says, these projects are in this phase, these are in this phase, et cetera. They're sorted by phase. You can sort by customer and phase, or you can, do some forecasting based on your schedule. For example, testing is defined as a phase, so you can forecast how many testing resources am I going to need next month based on consistent definition in your WBSs that identify that this is a testing phase and the testing deliverable. So those are clearly some of the lessons learned. Isn't as much the tool, but making sure you're structured, you identify what your key milestones are, and you identify how to measure your key milestones.
Mm-hmm. So big lesson learned in that case is a tool is a tool. You need the correct processes. That will be your main concern of the portfolio management then.
Exactly. I often use, I do a lot of presentation stuff. I often use the analogy of Norm Abrams, the guy who does the New Yankee Workshop, the guy who can take a hickory tree and turn it into a hutch in 30 minutes or less.
It's my wife's favorite television show.
But, he has this wonderful workshop. I mean, it's a gorgeous workshop with scores of tools. You could give me that workshop and the same wood But since I don't really know how to use those tools and when to use those tools, I'm not able to produce what he is able to produce. So
Many of us wouldn't.
That. Right, but tools are just that. I mean, there's a utilization of tools, when to use which one, et cetera. So that's where, and we go back to turnkey application, that's kind of where I'm at on a generic one-size-fits-all is really difficult, because tools, again, for Norm Abrams, he's able to go into a lathe and be able to turn a nice 4 legs nicely, all with the ridges in the right spot and everything. I go in there with a lathe and I make sawdust. it's that knowledge and application that's so key. And if I could go to, and I hope I'm not getting a real company here, but I think at one time there was something called like project management in a box or something like that. That's great if your processes line up completely with the definition of what the box has. But I've yet to meet an organization that thinks they have an off-the-shelf process.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. I'd like to come back to a word you've used twice in the interview so far, compliance. You were saying that portfolio management will help you to be compliant. Now, when you talk about compliance, are you referring to compliance to your internal methodology, or are you referring to compliance in regards to regulatory requirements like audits or maybe a law?
Initially, I'd been referring to compliance with methodologies or internal processes. However, with Sarbanes-Oxley and a few other things over the last few years, there are some things that the tool lets you do that makes you compliant to those regulations. We do a lot of work with external customers, so we have some things where we have to have non-disclosure agreements and some other things like that. So, we track compliance to those business rules and et cetera through the tool. Mainly, we've got this signed NDA from XYZ, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some compliance there to higher level laws or laws of the business or even laws of the company, or laws of the United States is probably where I should have gone to. Like I said, with Sarbanes-Oxley, we have some things where we're dealing with projects that can involve a significant amount of dollar transfer between the two organizations, so you need to be able to track some of those things. But I've really been focusing on compliance to the process. In thinking of the portfolio manager, that you're really a B or C level manager with a lot of project managers that report to you. So you want to be able to get information back from all the projects in your portfolio that's consistent, and that's where the compliance comes in. So you as a B level manager have a good view of everything in your project. And if there's somebody that's not going in there and updating the phases properly, then you're going to be having problems as you generate reports and say, well, these folks are in Engage, right? Really, they're ready to go into test. So
Okay.
That's where I'm at on the compliance.
Yeah. Now, when I look back at the portfolio management tools or portfolios that I implemented, it was usually mostly, just a list of projects with the priorities at the company and where they're at. However, when I listen to what you've said and how the tools that you're using are being used, it seems that they're also almost a content management system, a document management system for your project. Is that correct? Am I hearing you right?
You're hearing me absolutely right. There's change control and document management, et cetera. The tool we use in one of my organizations checks in and out MS project files into the tool, but it stores previous versions and et cetera. So to be able to roll back to a previous version is one of the capabilities of the tool, or to be able to even do variance reports between the original and the baseline. We try to think that this phase will take 10 days, and then we're able to look over time and say, well, actually it's 14 days or business days. So there's some of those that are very helpful. So yes, it becomes the business information system for all your projects that you're working on.
Right. And it also makes sense because you're drilling down to the individual project, you're inputting information about an individual project, about a phase, about a deliverable, and then you aggregate it to the top where you'll have your portfolio and where you can see where you're at in overall in your projects. Does that kind of summarize it?
Exactly. And another piece on here is resource allocation, et cetera. By being able to look at all the projects, you're able to see if an individual is over-allocated, under-allocated, et cetera, et cetera. And also, we actually, I'll go on a tangent here for a little bit. I had
Please
a discussion with one of the people that reported to me, when we were talking about compliance. He's like, Dave, what the heck are you talking here? Do you want this to be like CNN headline news? I mean, how frequently you want me to go in and update this? I can't do it every minute because I've got my real job to do. And I was thinking that, it's a fair question. Then I started thinking that my answer to him was, it's kind of like, to me, I should be able to have a daily newspaper. In the morning when I go to my newspaper, and I'm still one of these guys that read print newspapers as well as internet, but I'm a dinosaur. But when I go to that newspaper, there's certain things I expect. One is I'm going to get headlines of major events that have happened in the area. So somehow in this portfolio management tool, you need to tell me major things that happen. Whatever it is, if a system upgrade has gone in over the weekend, that's there, or such and such a customer has done such a thing, that's fine. So I've got that. Then I want to go to the sports page and see what the scores were of yesterday's game. So I should be able to get a quick view of what was completed yesterday, what happened. And then I want a weather forecast. So I should be able to go and see a forecast of what's going on the next week or 2 weeks or whatever that is. And then also there's this thing in the newspaper on the stock quotes and et cetera. A lot of detail that it's there. I sometimes look at it, I sometimes don't. So we generate a list of all our current issues that are open. And we also in there date them based on how long they've been open. So, at the top, if it's been open 42 days, there's something needs to be done about that. I mean, that's just too long. So I'm able to look at that type of information. So we've actually generated this report, and we call it the Daily Planet. I guess we're in a Superman mode at the time. But, and that's really, to me, the day-to-day nuts and bolts of what the portfolio management is able to do. It's able to take that snapshot and give you a newspaper-like report of this is what the status of your portfolio is. And we distribute that to lots of people, including executives and et cetera. And sometimes they reference it, sometimes they don't, and you can say, it was in there, you could have read it, but you don't say things like that because you want to have teamwork, not confrontation. But that's a wonderful source we found to be able to do that, especially forecasting for some of our support groups of things that are coming down the pipe. So that's kind of where I'm at on some of those things with the currency of the data. So I went off on a tangent, and you got to bring me back to the original question because I don't remember it.
No. I think it was a good tangent. Let's stay on a tangent. Let's continue on another tangent completely. And that's the one you've recently begun writing a blog. It's called Tools, Trends, and Thoughts on Project Management. It's a blog on IT Toolbox, and I'm going to put a link into the show notes so that people can easily find it. What can we expect to learn from you on that particular blog? Because last time I checked, you had about 3 or 4 entries in the blog yet. What's coming? What have you in store for us?
Well, a couple things. Some are kind of theories, like I said, thoughts. I've got one out there that I call the 5 R's, which, when my dad was growing up in the Roosevelt administration, it was reading, writing, arithmetic. I think in the 80s, I joked that they brought in Redmond as a 4th R, the Microsoft Office tool set. And now I'm saying that the 5th R is going to be reporting, and a project manager's got to be able to report their information clean and crisp. They really have to understand how to report this back. So you're going to see thoughts like that. I think you'll see some actual templates and some things that I've found successful in some different areas. Actually, I'm working on one right now for a change management template and an associated process that goes with that. I think you'll see different tidbits of governance, various points of governance within a project. For example, how should you communicate to new people in the project what is expected of them? What do they do when they get an issue? I think there's some things from a governance perspective that can be brought up front in the project that the project manager can share with the teammates. So, like I said, if you get an issue assigned to you, what do you do? And with a tool, there's things such as go in and accept the issue or update in the tool. So there's lots of different mechanics that are also involved in managing the portfolio piece of that. So you'll see some of that. You'll see some, like I said, thoughts. I got one on there, and I've talked about a lot on the convergence of tools going forward. I really see the portfolio, and we'll probably talk about this more later, but the portfolio management tool being tightly linked with your requirements tools, or they may actually be the same one, process tools and some of those things. I think we're going to see more and more convergence where we're going to have one place that's going to be able to tie these pieces together.
Okay.
I'm getting a lot of phone calls tonight.
That's the life of a portfolio manager.
Yeah, and there's things, I'll just go out there and ramble on some stuff. What am I thinking at the time? What are my thoughts? And what are your thoughts to go with it? And I think you'll see some other editorials like, why do project managers hate portfolio management?
Are you going to do any portfolio management tool reviews at all?
I don't have any planned right at the moment. I'm trying to keep technology agnostic because, as we talked about before, the tool or the technology really is irrelevant to the way you as a business manage your portfolio.
And that was David L. Davis talking to me about project portfolio management tools. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Tune in again next week for the second part of the interview with Dave. As always, you can find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And when you stop by at thepmpodcast.com, please don't forget to click on the link on the left-hand side labeled PM Templates to increase your productivity and check out the great PM templates that are offered. And finally, we have this. No project would ever get started if the truth were told about the cost and the timescale. With that, when looking at your portfolio, be realistic about the number of projects that your organization can undertake all at once. Giving too many projects to each project manager will just lead to burnout. Until next time.